This is Vivian Nixon, and I'm not going to tell your story. You tell your story.
Oh, boy. Hello, everyone. My name is Vivian Nixon, and I am here to talk about the complexities of our democracy because I feel like I embody many of those complexities. I first met Steve at the Aspen Institute, and we are having a conversation on moving families from poverty into economic stability and economic security. And part of that conversation was to talk about women and men and families who have been impacted by our criminal justice system, by the massive influx of people into the system through a shift in policies and practices that have caused the United States to be the largest incarcerator of its citizens in the entire world. I'm going to throw out a few numbers and then I will get to my story, but I think it's really important to have context. We have 2 million people in jails and prisons in the United States. That is a tremendous increase from the 1980s when we started to throw vast amounts of money into our system of incarceration and reduce the amount of money that went into our system of education. 2/3 of the people who are in prison are parents to 2 million children. Half of the people in prison are there for property crimes, other nonviolent crimes, and many of them are there for crimes related to substance abuse, which is now being recognized as a public health issue and not a criminal justice issue. Most people who go to prison eventually come home. And because the prison system has become just a system of warehousing people with little access to education and other types of programming, people are coming home unprepared to live in a society, many times years and years after they were first incarcerated, many times as 16-year-olds, coming out in their mid-30s and 40s with no understanding of technology or how the world works. This is not good for our society in any way whatsoever. So I sit kind of at the center of a lot of complexity. I'm an ordained minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and I'm a woman with a felony conviction on my record. I join 70 million other Americans who have convictions on their record. 70 million people is 22% of the entire population. So those of you who think that you're walking through society, going to the grocery store, going to the corner store, getting in a cab, getting on a train, and you are untouched by this massive criminal justice system, 22% of the people that you encounter in your life have a criminal record on file.
Vivian, thank you for sharing that. You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you here is I think it's another part of stakeholders in democracy revitalizing is talent left in the closet or shoved under the rug or left on the table. And I know that you're working with women who have been incarcerated and counseling them on how to re-enter society. And I'm just interested in, you know, give us a story or two on what we should be scaling up.
Absolutely. So re-entry became kind of a buzzword in 2004. When then President George W. Bush mentioned second chances in his State of the Union address. Following that, there was a bill passed in Congress called the Second Chance Act, which gave very limited funding. It's not a lot of money, but it was enough to get some programs started to assist people returning into the community to get jobs, to get housing, to get treatment, whatever they needed in order to reclaim their lives and go on another track. I watched that speech and I was startled because while President Bush mentioned employment and housing and substance abuse treatment, there was no mention of education. It literally startled me. And I was like, education should have been number one. So at College and Community Fellowship, what we do is we work with women coming out of jails and prisons to find out what their skills are, but more than what their skills are, what their dreams are, what their visions for their life are as American citizens, to reclaim that citizenship, to reclaim their role in the community, so that they no longer feel like Langston Hughes once felt, you know, America's not America to me. We work with women so that they can say, but I swear this oath, America will be. We introduce them into the world of access to college. What does it mean to go to college? How does it improve your chances to succeed? What do you want to study? And then we actually connect them with schools here in New York City so that they can begin their journey toward a college degree. And to date, we have an 82% retention rate, a 78% graduation rate, and less than 2% of the women we've worked with in close to 17 years have gone back to prison. Less than 2%.
And just short form, because I want to give the audience a real opportunity to ask you questions. Do the people that you bring through these programs, do they get an opportunity? I mean, I don't know how it works. Do they get an opportunity to vote again, or are they permanently off the rolls? Do they take this opportunity as a way, I mean, Andy Weingarten and I have talked about this, to feel the power of empowerment of becoming a more actively engaged citizen and shaping their environment? Does that happen? Because I get the sense from other quarters that a lot of these folks continue to be perceived as fringe people. Yeah. And I'm interested in whether they can take control of their own selves and turn that table around.
Well, people with felony convictions, people who have been in prison are moving out of the fringes and creating their own movement. Right. There are 3 states where people who have been convicted of felonies can never ever vote again. I know Florida is one of them. I can't remember the other 2. Some states allow people to vote once they are out of prison and off parole. New York is one of those states. Maine and Vermont let people vote while they're in prison because there's nothing in our founding documents that declares a person who is incarcerated is no longer a citizen. And in the states where they can never vote again, they're not relieved of their tax burdens. So that is a little bit of a problem to some people I know who threw some tea in the river one time. That is a problem. But one of the things we do at CCF, in addition to, and CCF is what we call College and Community Fellowship, in addition to connecting women to college opportunities, we have an advocacy platform. So we work really hard to expand access to education in prisons, which was readily available up until 1994. Not free, but because students in prisons had no money, and there was a government program that was made for students who have no money. It's called Pell Grants. And Senator Claiborne Pell always intended that to be available to every low-income student, even if they were incarcerated. Those opportunities were taken away in 1994 with the Clinton crime bill, and we're working really hard to restore access to education in prisons. There are many private colleges that give excellent college-level program in prisons, who have great success with their students. Their students are out in the community doing wonderful things, not going back to prison, which is not the primary cause of education, but it is a benefit to society. The Barred Prison Initiative, Hudson Link, there's the prison program at San Quentin in California. People are thirsty for education. Education has always been the way that we get a healthier, more productive society. And people are shut out of education from very early ages in some communities. We know that there is a disparate level of education, disparate quality of education from one community to the next. If we could invest more in education, we would not have to do it on the back end and invest so much in criminal justice.
Thank you for taking us. It is very. Let me open the floor for a minute for questions, thoughts, comments, reactions. Do we have a mic out there? Any reactions, comments, thoughts? I will call on you. Yes, right here. In the red, the lady in red. Oh, is that Allison? Allison Silver. Yes, Allison is an iconic editor in our business. Allison.
Hi, my name is Allison Silver. And the Attorney General has been changing some of the things that the Obama administration passed to enable people in jail to perhaps be pardoned or to be released early when they had non-violent crimes. What do you think should be done about the current programs in the Justice Department?
So for me, it's not just about the Criminal Justice Department. And, you know, there's some things that they left in place, which is great. Second Chance Pell, which is a pilot program to give more access to education, they're leaving that in place. You know, I want to give this thought, because I really think that we tinker around with each individual policy as if they're disconnected. But I think the underpinning of everything that we're seeing now is this, this reluctance to look at the values, the moral underpinnings of our democracy, and to look at everything in this really pedantic way and try to analyze every policy. But the moral and value underpinnings are what is slipping away from us. And we're in this place of silliness, where seriousness and complexity is perceived as some kind of a vice, when really what we need is more seriousness and more complexity and more understanding of history and the consequences of our actions today. And not just the consequences for me as an individual, what are the consequences for my neighbor? When do we get back to that America that Walt Whitman talked about? America, the center of equal daughters, equal sons. When do we get back to that?
I just want to say as we finish, now you can tell why I love Vivian Nixon. This summer, or I guess it was last summer, we were with Randy, and some of you folks were there in the Aspen Institute. I just want to wrap up with a little vignette, because it was an amazing thing about Vivian Nixon. I'm going to just say it out loud. We did this weird thing, unconference, and we were struggling with this idea of how to get people to rediscover what it means to be a citizen, have empathy, mutual concern, restore civitas. We brought a lot of different people into a room, and we didn't organize. All I did is I created 4 different groups, and I called the groups the Hamilton, the Jefferson, the Madison, and the Burr group. And Vivian was there, and she kind of eavesdropped on all the groups, and they did it, and she turned their reports into the most beautiful rap. So I thank you for talking normally to us, because I know you could do it all in rap today. And then, if you may remember, in this session with Michael Steele and others on how to restore American civitas, you opened that session performing this rap, which he had created that day. You're very into this. You're very engaged, and I want to thank you so much for sharing your portal into a very important part of this question. Ladies and gentlemen, Vivian Nixon, thank you.